Right. Can I make the decision that since I'm the one here at the schoolhouse that I'll chair the meeting? Does that work for Kenny and Al?
Yes.
That's fine with me, yes.
Okay. So welcome to the meeting of the Architectural Site Control Commission, Monday, February the 13th, 2023. Can I ask you to move? Okay. Right, so we'll turn to Laura for roll call.
Commissioner Sill,
Here.
Commissioner Chung,
Here.
Vice Chair Wilson.
Here. Have I just been promoted without knowing it?
Commissioner Wilson.
Okay. All right, thank you. So this would be the part where we open up public comments during oral communications. Do we have anyone who wants to speak about things that are not on our agenda for this evening?
We have 2 attendees that are in Zoom, and we have 3 attendees that are in the schoolhouse right now, and there are not any hands up at this time.
Right. Should we give them another 10 seconds?
Sure.
Right, are we seeing any hands on Zoom?
No, there are no people who wish to speak on oral communications.
Right, so in that case, we will close all communications and move on to item number 1 on our new business agenda, which is the architectural review for a new detached ADU pool and hardscaping at 3 Grove Court, Chancuti Residence. And I'm not sure.
And Ralph is the project planner. He'll be give the presentation on behalf of staff. Ralph, I don't know if your project team is here. Do you see the applicant for this project?
I see, oh, attendees maybe. I see Patrick. Excuse me, I think Crystal was maybe planning to attend in person. I don't know if she's there. Oh, there she is. Hi, Crystal.
Hi. Okay,
Great, so we have.
Is Patrick that's in the attendees another applicant for this? Patrick, if you are, would you raise your hand?
Yes, he is.
He is, okay. Patrick, I'm going to promote you to a panelist so you can be seen by everybody.
I don't know if we also have a Cameron there at all, but if he pops in, he'll also be our other applicant here.
Cameron.
Okay, we do not have a Cameron at this time. Oh,
Okay.
looks like Cameron's joining from his panelist link.
Great.
Recording in progress.
Let me get started here. Great, and you can all see my screen, okay?
Yes.
Great. Excellent. Well, good evening, everyone. It's good to see you all. So our first item tonight, it's an architectural review for an ADU pool and hardscape at 3 Grove Court. Little project background. So back in 2013, this applicant applied for some significant remodeling to the existing house, as well as a detached guest house. That detached guest house was approved and very closely follows the current ADU plan. But due to the amount of time that lapsed, all those permits, of course, were no good. So they then had to come back through our ASCC process. And we'll go back through in a second why that is for the ADU. First, a little bit about the site. The 3 Grove Court, it fronts onto Grove Court here. So you drive up and you get to the top of the site and it goes downhill from there towards Grove Drive. So the site's actually accessible from both Grove Court as well as there's steps coming up from Grove Drive with that slope going downwards. Now, as you can see from the proposed site plan, we have the existing house here, and then between the existing house and this south side property line is the proposed pool and guest house. Now, normally, it's proposed pool and ADU. Now, normally an ADU in a project of this scope would only require staff review. However, because of the requirements of the Portola Valley Municipal Code, any site that contains historic resources that are noted in the historic element of the general plan require review by the ASCC. So we'll get into the locations of here, but we have the existing house and both the wine cellar that fall into that category. Now, for this project specifically, we have an increase in the amount of impervious surface for the pool and hardscaping of just over 1,300 square feet. And we also have our new new ADU building, which is causing the site to exceed our maximum floor area. This is allowed based on state law exemptions for ADUs. So any ADU that exceeds our floor area maximums can be up to 800 square feet. ADUs may also take advantage of additional setback exceptions and height exceptions. In this case, this ADU still complies with the height exceptions and setback exceptions of the base zoning district. So here's our ADU floor plan. As you can see, we have our living area, bedroom, kitchen, bathroom. So all of our required elements of the ADU. The ADU is also going to have washer dryer accessible from on the side here from outside, and the front of the ADU facing the pool. So the way. So altogether, we're adding 558 square feet of new floor area with the ADU. Here you can see the north elevation. So if you're sitting in the pool, this will be your view, and then our south elevation from that south side property line. So you can see here the ADU complies with the 16-foot height maximum dictated by state law, as well as the height maximums of the base zoning districts for detached accessory buildings. The proposed siding and materials matches the existing house in color and closely in competition. Now, the applicant did have to make a revision to this siding to comply with the town's new WUI requirements, but this proposed material does require with the requirement for non-combustible materials. And as you can see, the colors meet the town's reflectivity guidelines, as well as they match again with the existing residence. So noted again, we had an increase in about 1,700 square feet worth of impervious surface. So most of our impervious surface currently for our existing driveway and some pathways along the property, as well as an existing patio in the front of the residence. So we're adding a bit here for the pool and the deck around the pool, but still well within, as you can see, our adjusted maximum impervious surface limit. Landscape and fencing. There's no new landscaping proposed as part of this project. And as you can see, there's an existing wooden wire fence around each of the property lines, actually. All of that is proposed to stay in place. All of the existing trees on the site are being kept in place, and tree protection measures are proposed as required. So this is a review coming up, at the bottom of Grove Drive, looking upward from the property. Now, if you were to go onto any of the neighboring properties, there's a fair amount of trees that actually line the street. So this project is very minimally visible from any neighboring properties. But again, you've got a little bit of visibility from Grove Drive and a little bit of screening from existing vegetation, but nothing new proposed as noted. And once again, noting all trees being kept in place. So applicant called out those protected trees and provided a tree protection plan for the town's review. And again, all those being kept in place. So there is some minimal lighting being proposed as part of this project. Currently, the plans have 2 fixtures on the exterior of the ADU. There will also be some pool lights, submerged pool lights. Now that fixture has not been finalized, but once it is, the town will have to review that for compliance with all our output and shielding requirements. Now, during the site visit, it was brought up whether the applicant, as you can see on the right side of that ADU, there are those doors to access the laundry area. It was suggested that the applicant consider adding another light. The applicant also mentioned that they may consider adding some additional path lightings for this walkway between the ADU pool area and the main house. So maybe a thing where ASCC, we may just want to add a condition saying if the applicant proposes new lighting, either that gets reviewed by the staff for normal town requirements, or perhaps we designate one member of the ASCC to review any changes to the lighting plan, just to be doubly sure we're not running into any issues with the number of fixtures or the location of those fixtures. So per our standard guidelines here, we send out notice to all property owners within 300 feet. There was a letter received from a neighbor at 350 Grove. There was also another letter that was submitted to me. Now, this was received in January 29th, but I actually just received it this afternoon. So I will read that into the public record in just a moment. if you allow me. And the applicant, of course, also provided the required neighbor notification letter dated January 14th, 2022. So just give me a moment here to pull up my additional neighbor letter. Thank you, Crystal, for forwarding this to me. So in addition to the letter from 350 Grove, which was included in the staff packet, we also received a letter from Alyssa Fabian, who writes, "To whom it may concern. I'm writing on behalf of the Fabian family. Our driveway is right across from the future project at C and Sudi House. We are in full support of the project and are so happy that a family has moved in there. It really made the property a home. Our daughter babysits for the family and loves the job, and we consider them excellent neighbors. We look forward to a new look in their yard and wish them all the luck with their project. So sincerely, Alyssa S. Fabian." I believe Crystal, our property owner, who's on in the room, also had some additional outreach with neighbors and got some comments that she might speak to when she gets an opportunity to make some remarks to you all. But just to quickly sum up where we ended up, can we see my, here we go. Technical delay here. Okay, so as mentioned, this site is mentioned within the historic element of the general plan. Here's the exact text from the historic element, which is also linked to in the staff report. It mentions the existing residence was the original Fitzhugh residence, number 3 Grove Court. And we also have that existing detached wine cellar on the site. All of these existing historic resources were reviewed back in 2013 when the main residence was undergoing extensive renovation. And the determination at that time was that those renovations, the proposed guest house, were not going to have any adverse effects on the historic resources on the property. Additionally, with the resubmission, let me go full screen for you guys. Realizing there. Go. Okay. This was also routed to the Historic Resource Committee. We reviewed this again just to essentially double check that the new submission also would not pose any impacts to the existing historic resources. Again, with the historic home and the existing wine cellar, the determination there was that there would be no impacts. As required by the Port Valley Municipal Code, of course, though, we did route this to ACC for your guys' review. So really more of kind of a procedural requirement more than anything. But based on all that information, we are recommending approval of this application, subject to the recommended conditions in attachment 1, and pending maybe an additional condition again related to them revising that lighting plan. And I am available for questions. And of course, we also have Crystal and some other members, Crystal in the room, and also some other members of the applicant team on Zoom. And I yield my time back to you.
All right, thank you, Ralph. Commissioner Sill, do you have any questions?
I do not have any questions.
Commissioner Chung, do you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Right, so we'll go over to Mrs. Jankuti for an applicant presentation.
I don't have much to say. Thanks, Ralph, for the good overview. You know, we are bringing substantially the same project that was already approved when we did the main house renovation. We've simplified a little bit. The siding is updated for the party board versus wood siding. We removed the skylight and the roof now matches the main house. But other than that, it's the same project. We just are finally going back into the construction process. So.
Right. All right, thank you. Commissioner Sill, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I do not.
Commissioner Chung, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No questions as well. Thank you.
All right. The only thing I will say is that I had the advantage this afternoon in that I was able to do the site visit. And it was actually me that brought up the light over the shower on the corner of the ADU. And path lights were mentioned at the same time. There was the construction people were there as well, and we discussed whether or not there was going to be a general switch to make all the lights turn off at the same time if there were, you know, if there was anybody using the ADU or the laundry. which is on the corner next to the shower, by the way. So I thought that I spoke to Ralph and the applicant, and we discussed whether or not the lighting plan could come back to the ASCC, one commissioner, to review, because the lighting plan does not seem to be excessive. So that was one of the discussions that we had without other commissioners present, just to advise. All right. So Al and Kenny, do you want to ask me anything about that?
Nope, that makes sense.
Okay. So then we go over to comments from the public about this project.
If you have any public comments on this project, please raise your hand on Zoom, or if anyone in the room would like to give a public comment on this item, please come to the podium. Right now, we have 2 people on Zoom and 12 people in the schoolhouse. And I do not see any hands up, and there's no one coming to the podium. So we do not have any public comment.
Right, I will therefore close the public hearing on this point and come back to the commission for discussion. Kenny, would you like to go first?
Sure. I would say, you know, it seems not very controversial, aside from the lighting issue, which I think is covered fairly well by the request to, or the condition to have it be reviewed. And it sounds like Jane, you had a full discussion with the applicants or the applicant team on this. And so the only thing I would have to say is just to also reiterate what has probably been said already, to encourage the applicant to minimize the lighting to what is truly needed and only on when it's needed. And of course, within the quantitative limits that are provided in the town policies.
Thank you, Kenny. Commissioner Sill?
Yes, this proposal looks very reasonable to me. And I think that the applicant's done a good job with it. I don't see any particular issues. I do think that if there's going to be a change to the lighting that was presented to us in our packet, then I do think there should be a review by a ASCC commissioner. I think one would be acceptable. But no, other than that, I think that this is a good proposal, and I don't see any reason that it shouldn't go forward.
Right, thank you, Commissioner Sill. I too do not have any further comments to make about the project. I think it's a good project, and that all the way in which it has been designed and constructed, it looks good. So I would like to entertain a motion to approve this project with the added condition that one person from the ASCC review any additional lighting on the path and the corner of the ADU.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, Jane. I guess the one other thing I would request is the first condition, the wording in it is a little weird. I think that I'd like to see that cleaned up also. It's got a couple extra words in it or something. If anybody could pull that up or see it.
Could you point us to a page, please, Al?
Oh, it is.
It looks like it's read page 10.
Yes, that's right. And that first condition, it's just the English is not completely clear. I mean, I know what is meant. We're not supposed to have any impact, but the wording is off. Construction and construction-related activities shall not have present any impacts to the existing wine cellar.
Right. We just need to delete have, don't we?
Right, I think that would solve it, yeah.
And I would actually suggest looking at this with fresh eyes, that we leave it to the satisfaction of the planning and building director, because we'll have to look at the construction staging plan, but we need to make sure that there's nothing that potentially impacts the historic resource. So, because that's what this condition is about. So I
Okay.
would say construction and construction related activities shall not have any impacts to the existing wine cellar to the satisfaction of the planning and building director. That would be my recommendation.
Great, yeah, that sounds good to me.
Right.
So I think we have a motion from Commissioner Sill
Yeah.
with the amendment to condition number 1 and a new condition that any changes to the lighting plan shall be reviewed by one member of the ASCC.
Yes,
I'll second that motion.
All right, so that would be roll call on the vote.
Commissioner Sill,
yes,
Commissioner Chung,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
So the motion passes 3-0.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in person. It's nice to see people here in the schoolhouse.
We have missed people. All right, so we're now moving on to item number 2 of new business, which is the architectural and site development review for a new single-family residence with detached garage, carport, detached ADU, hardscaping and landscaping at 151 Brookside. Am I going to say this right? Snaper Residence. And we have the applicants in the room and the architects. So if you'd like to come forward to the podium.
If you'd like to, the applicant can come to the green table and use this microphone if you'd like.
I believe this will be a presentation by Ralph.
This is,
Yes, that's what we mean.
Ralph has this presentation as well.
Yes, so we have Mike and Tom from the applicant team. I don't believe we have anyone online from the applicant team. Great. Okay. So our next project constitutes a full site redevelopment at 155 Brookside Drive, separate residence. Project includes a new main residence, garage with attached carports, detached ADU, and additional hardscape and landscape improvements. Here we see 151 Brookside Drive. So what Brookside Drive is that kind of odd street off of Portola where one access in and then one access out. It's a pretty narrow street and kind of right smack dab in the middle of it, abutting Corte Madera Creek. We have 151 Brookside Drive, which to the rear again abuts the creek, abuts Brookside Drive in the front, and then we have the 2 other properties adjacent on either side. The site developable area is relatively flat. If you had a chance to go to the site visit, you'll see at the rear of the site, it then slopes somewhat dramatically down towards the creek, but there's no construction in that area. So here we see our proposed site plan. You can see shaded in the black outline is the existing residence closer to the creek. The plan is to build a new, larger, single-family, single-story residence closer to the front of the property. The main consideration here, which you can see outlined with this kind of red dashed line in the rear, is the required setback from that creek. So the municipal code requires additional setbacks from named creeks in Portola Valley. And there was quite a bit of conversation between the applicant, their engineer, and our town engineer about where to set that creek setback at. Our town engineer went on the site and reviewed all the required documentation, and a determination was made where to locate this. They came up with I'd say a fairly conservative estimate for the best place to locate that creek setback. And as you can see, it's actually going to locate the new residence and any hardscapes out of that creek setback. Whereas you can see currently the existing residence has that setback running pretty much smack dab right through the middle of it. So that was the applicant's main consideration as far as the siting of the residence. We also, as you can see on the bottom here, we have our proposed 2-car garage with 2 attached carports right immediately adjacent to the driveway and parking area, and then the detached ADU unit on the back left rear of this property. Now, siting of those structures, you'll notice between the residence and the ADU, there's a rather large tree. So it was the applicant's desire to maintain and protect that tree to the greatest extent possible. So the driveway is actually shortened from the existing driveway length and concentrated here just off of Brookside. And again, with the ADU situated out of that tree strip lines. So here's our layout for the proposed residence. So this is a single-story residence, no basement proposed. And the applicant is also taking advantage of the 18-foot height limit for the single-story floor area bonus. And here are proposed layouts for both the garage and ADU. The ADU does comply with all the required elements for an ADU, so kitchen, bath, bedroom. I will also note, however, that the applicant, could use an additional floor exemption for the ADU. The ADU floor area can be accommodated within the allowable maximum floor area. And so the entire site falls both under the 85% limits and the 100% AMFA limits without using any further exceptions. So here's our rendering along the front of the property. So again, we have our existing 1-story residence, about 19.5 feet. So our proposed residence is going to slot just under 18 feet in height. The detached garage is about 12 feet in height, and then the detached ADU, as we'll see, is at about 15.5 feet in height. Here are our proposed elevations. So we have our front as well as our south side and then north side. And then you see our ADU and garage, both utilizing the same materials as a proposed residence. And again, we're all slotting within our required height limits. Now, something we will get back into a little bit further here. This bottom right image of the garage and carport, this is what faces the neighbor who submitted a comment with their principal issue being the length of this garage and carport and the siting of this garage and carport, where it kind of goes along the length of their living room essentially and obstructs some current view onto the 151 Brookside property. We'll delve into that a little further though, but did want to just bring it up. So proposed materials comply with town requirements, both for ULI requirements as well as light reflectivity. And as you can see, they get a lot of browns, a lot of grays. So natural color palette, again, all within town guidelines. And the materials were proposed to match for all 3 proposed structures. You can see our layout of our proposed impervious surfaces. So we're both, under the maximum allowed, as well as reducing the amount of impervious surface from what is currently on the site. In fact, the amount of impervious surface currently on the site actually exceeds the amount allowed. So the new project would bring this site into conformance. As you can see, it's principally concentrated. We have our driveway parking area, as well as some walkway area for accessing the ADU and residence, and then a small patio off of the rear of the residence, but again, respecting that creek setback. The proposed landscaping plan, reviewed by Conservation Committee with no additional comments there, makes use of town-approved species, but emphasis on native and drought-tolerant species. And as you can see, the project does a fairly good job of not creeping into a high MAWA number. In fact, they're only at 61% currently for their water usage. Now, something that was brought up at the site visit, and especially with respect to this proposed garage carport, is whether the applicant could consider some alternative plantings, maybe to assist with screening. So we'll leave that as an item for conversation with you all a little later. There are 2 proposed fences as part of this project. So we have a lower profile primarily open wood fence along the front property line. Along this south or left side property line is proposed 6-foot good neighbor fence. Now, the rear portion of that fence is actually an existing fence that belongs to the neighbor. So the applicant, in response to some of the concerns about the visibility of the garage and the ADU from the neighbor's property, has proposed to essentially extend that existing fence to where the front setback line would be. So essentially to the extent to which you'd be allowed to have a 6-foot fence. Otherwise, the property is open around the rear and the opposite side property line. So even with the additional new fencing, still fairly open and still fairly open for wildlife to traipse through. Tree removal. So there are 3 significant trees proposed for removal. Now, the applicant originally proposed an additional tree removal. That's tree number 12, which is immediately behind that garage carport. The applicant's now proposing to try to keep that tree in place to assist with the screening of that garage and carport for the neighbor. Also, originally, tree number 21 was not included as part of the tree removal plan, but was recommended by the Conservation Committee for removal. And so the applicant decided to add that onto the plan. These 2 trees are all noted as being in extremely or very poor condition, and the Conservation Committee was in support of the removal of these 3. Otherwise, the trees on the site are being relatively untouched, especially along the rear of the property. We have a number of large redwoods, for example, along the creek there. All that being kept in place. And in general, any new landscaping is concentrated along the side property lines, along the front of the house to assist with screening. But for the most part, the site is being undisturbed. So our site development totals, this is subject to ASCC review. You can see most of the work has to do with the cut for both the building pad and the site work, with a minimal amount of fill for the site work as well. So again, we're within our ASCC bucket. See, we've got a fair amount of offall. So I know sometimes ASCC will make comments as far as the use of that offall or the applicant doing what they can to reduce that amount. But all within the range of what's reviewable by ASCC. Exterior lighting. So we have a few fixtures. So for example, the garage doors, as well as the doors on the residence and the porch area. We have a couple of recessed lights. So pretty restricted as far as what is needed for, well, what is required, one, for exterior doors and needed for safe ingress and egress. And then we also have a few fixtures around the property for landscape lighting. So you can see those called out here. All low profile path lights, all meeting the lumen restrictions for the town, all dark sky compliant. And you can see concentrated primarily on pathways and a low number overall. So notice this public meeting was originally mailed to all property owners on January 13th. We then sent a second notice on January 18th following the cancellation of the January 23rd meeting. Staff, prior to the January 23rd meeting, we received comments from both 153 and 182 Brookside, one stating some concerns and one in support of the project. Now, the neighbor concerns specifically that we mentioned, or primarily I should say, have to do with the garage and carport, specifically the length of that garage and carport. Let me actually pull up. Give me 1 second. Let me pull up our site photos, which I should have had in our one. Just in case anyone hasn't had a chance to get to the site, I think this will help a little better idea of what we're talking about here. And here we go. Okay. So you can see here along this left side of the property, at the front here, we have our length of the garage and proposed carport, and then the rear is the proposed ADU. Now, I should mention, if I haven't so far, the ADU is not under the review of the ASCC, as it falls into that bucket of state law where it can all be done ministerially. But of course, we include it here to give you a holistic sense of the project. Now, as for the garage, so that is proposed at a height of 12 feet. You can see the roof peak along there, and then coming down here. So primarily, you can see at the neighbor's house, the neighbor's two-story residence here. You can see a few of their windows. In this here, I can zoom in a little bit, if that would help. And so essentially, the neighbors issue is looking out those windows currently, they have a view of 151 Brookside property. And it's a fairly open view at the moment. So of course, that view would be obstructed by the new structure. The applicant will speak to this a little bit, and I believe we have the neighbor Nancy on the call as well, so she will, I'm sure, want to add some detail. But I believe part of the thought here is the fact that the garage and the proposed fence, as well as landscaping, will increase privacy for both 151 Brookside and the concerned neighbor. But again, I'll let our applicant and our neighbor speak to that in a little more detail. So all that considered, back my presentation.
Right. Well, thank you, Ralph. Commissioners, do we have
Yes,
any?
I'll start Jane just really quickly. Yes. Oh, sorry, just put a bow on it. Having said all that, staff is recommending the ASCC review the plans for any feedback or additional conditions. So a couple of things we mentioned was that concerned about the garage, or if again we want to consider the other options for the landscaping. But we are recommending approval of the both the architecture review and site development permits, subject to the conditions of approval included as attachment 1 of the staff report. Thank you. That's all I have for this. So thank you, Jane. Go back to you.
Sorry, Ralph. Thank you. All right. Commissioner Sill, do you have any questions of Ralph? Sorry.
I do have one, I guess, relatively minor question. Yeah. Ralph, could you pull up the sheet that has the landscape lighting or the path lighting?
Yeah.
Thanks. When I look at that, most of the lights look to me like they're functional, as I would expect, but there's 3 or 4 lights that look to me like they are not along any sort of a path, so I would call them decorative. And I thought that we did not permit decorative landscape lighting. So I guess that, let me see, there's one in the very back that looks to me like it's not doing much. There's at least one on the side, the right side, and then the one out front. All of those seem to me to be very decorative in nature. And I guess I'm curious as to what you were thinking when you thought those were okay.
Yeah, well, so first off, these ones in the back. So the general idea here was essentially you have egress from the ADU along the outside to this proposed rear patio. And then similar thought with the patio and then access to the front without having to go through the house. Now, that said,
I don't see any paths. There's no paths in the plan.
so there's not a path, no, but it essentially to allow, you to go along the property, without going through the house to get to the front. Now, maybe we say, because there's not a defined path, maybe we limit that to these rear, and then, you go to the rear and you go down this walkway and driveway, and then eliminate these ones. So I think that's, probably something. I'm sure that's something the applicant would be open to. And then with the front, I think same idea is just access from the street to the residence when you're walking at night. But again, I've had this come up on other projects. So again, I'm sure the applicant would, could speak to whether they'd be willing to remove these. Is it roughly these 3, or were there other ones you were thinking of?
Well, the one in the back, your cursor, that one right there, that one I don't understand either. So those were the 4 that gave me a little bit of heartburn. Other than that, I thought that the lighting plan was very tasteful and reasonable. So it's not like I'm all wound up about it, but it just, as a rule, we've always been very down on decorative lighting, and it looked to me like it was more decorative than functional. But thanks a lot. I thought the presentation was excellent.
All right.
And that's my only question.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Sill. Commissioner Chung, do you have any questions for?
Yes. Do the ADU that gets automatic approval, does that come with automatic approval of a certain amount of parking?
So there's a parking requirement for the ADU. So you are required to have at least one spot that may be covered or uncovered. So they did denote one of the carport spaces as ADU space. So they met that requirement.
And the town would consider the carport and garage spaces total to be 6, it looks like.
Four.
I believe it's, let me pull up my
I think
chart
it's
here.
four.
I think it's, is it 2 for the, 2 or 3 for the garage? Is that right? Or is it?
There was one guest, one ADU and
Yeah.
2 covered.
Yeah,
garage.
so 2 for the garage and then 1 each for each carport space. So 4 covered overall.
Oh, the carport spaces looked like they had the same amount of coverage as the garage. Oh,
Yeah, so if I can pull up the floor plan again. I marked it off.
I know.
So
It's,
that's a good question. Yeah, so let me pull up. Yeah, so we have our marked off dimensions for the garage, the 210 by 20. Whoops. Jumping around here.
Could you, is it possible to zoom in more on that? We can't see that dimension.
I think it's 10 by 20.
Yes, we have the 210 by 20, and then it looks like it's 16.4 by 20 deep, 2011 deep for the carports. So not quite 2 spots.
So 16.4 is about a car and a half. So that
Yes.
may be something that the commission asks the applicant to speak to and something you may want to discuss further.
okay. I mean, they look functionally like the same amount of space given that it's open on the side. Okay, and are there any restrictions in the policy on the number of car parking spaces provided, covered, or I guess it's all covered.
Yeah, the restrictions come in the form of the floor area restrictions and the impervious surface restrictions. So
Yeah.
people can add more garage space. I think the thing for the ASCC to consider after you've heard from the applicant and from the neighbor is the relationship between the orientation of this parking and it being rather linear along that property line and whether, that's appropriate or if any changes need to be made.
Okay, so residents can essentially have as much parking as they want within the floor area and impervious surface.
That's correct.
Thank you. That's it for my questions.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Chan. I don't have any further questions for Ralph. Again, I was able to go to the site visit this afternoon. There were 12 interested neighbours at the site visit this afternoon. And I would think that the main neighbours are going to speak during public comment. But we will hand over to the applicants for their presentation at this point.
And please speak right into the microphone to make sure we've got you for everyone on Zoom.
Good evening, commissioners here and online. My name is Michael Snepper, and on behalf of my wife, Marissa, in the back, and my family, I want to thank you all for being here tonight and for reviewing our proposed family home. I also want to thank Mr. Robinson and all the other staff here at the town of Portola Valley for the diligent review of our project and their hard work to get us here today. It's been a while. So before I get started, I want to tell you just a little bit about myself and my family super quickly. I'm a local guy, grew up in San Mateo, went to Hills at High School, College of San Mateo, went to Florida, got my degree there, and now I work in the senior care industry. My wife and I met in 2016, and I married in 2019. She got her degrees in Pennsylvania, and she works in finance. I purchased our property in 2011 as a single father and moved there with my young son and my daughter. And with the help of my wife, Larissa, over the next number of years, we can raise 2 kids there. We met in 2016 and, oh, sorry. So we got married in 2019. I think I might have already said that. So when we first purchased the house, right, it was virtually abandoned. And I think it was affectionately known as the haunted house in the neighborhood. It actually took roughly 80 medium-sized dump trailers to clean the brush, ivy, and down limbs and remove all the trunk and all the junk from the yard. And over the next couple of years, like I said, my wife and I, we raised 2 kids there, and one goes to university, is almost finished in San Diego. And the other one's in the United States Marine Corps. After seeing the property for the first time, we fell in love with it, fell in love with the house, with the property, with the neighborhood. And I knew immediately that we wanted to live there and at some point make it our generational family home. We actually started thinking about the house in 2014 when we first met with Carol Bork. I know this is a long time ago, but because of life circumstances, we didn't really start getting on the plans until 2018. And then COVID hit. And so a couple of years later, we're here today. So getting to the house itself, Larissa and I had a number of options. We were thinking about how to architect this house. So originally we envisioned the house as a 2-story house. But we quickly realized that such a home would be out of character for our neighborhood. Our neighborhood is primarily 1-story homes. We wanted to fit seamlessly into the neighborhood. And then most importantly, we didn't want to peer over and look down to our neighbors to the north. And we wanted our privacy. And obviously, we're very, very respectful for their privacy as well. So we instructed Tom to architect a 1-story home. We also didn't want the house to stand out. So we architected it in a very like a way to fit into the community, right, where we live, meaning the farmhouse style, the property with very muted natural colors, ones that frame the trees and the beauty of our drive. I think it's also important to note that when we designed our house, we had our neighbors also in mind. So because our adjacent northern neighbors are down underneath us, Steve and Barbara downslope from us, instructed Tom to actually redesign the family room to run north and south instead of east and west. And so what this did was that it allowed us actually to move the house back virtually another 5 feet from what's minimally required for a setback, so close to 15 feet. And that added a lot of extra daylight playing, a lot of sunset, a lot of sun. It cut down the exposure of our house to Nancy and to Barbara, sorry, to Steve and to Barbara. And it also saved a really nice fir tree also. The same consideration was given to our neighbors to the south. That's Nancy and Al. We asked Tom to redesign the garages and the carports so the pitches run east and west. We also lowered the roof to 12 feet, although it could be higher. And again, that enabled a lot more daylight playing and sun exposure, right? And it softened the constructor's view from their house. I guess in conclusion, it goes without saying, this is not a spec home. It will be our legacy home, one that my wife and I and our family have always dreamed of. My mother is going to be living there as well in the ADUs someday. I believe our home, it meets all the requirements, all the codes. It actually even exceeds a lot of codes for the town of Portola Valley. I think it fits beautifully within our lot, inconspicuously within the street. And we would therefore sincerely appreciate and respectfully ask for your approval to our plans as is. Again, thank you for your time.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Snapper. Do we have any questions from Commissioner Sill for the applicant?
No questions.
Do you have any questions from Commissioner Chung for the applicant?
In response to the concerns about the lighting, would you be, what is your feeling about an approval with a condition to reduce the outdoor lighting?
Not a problem at all, Commissioner.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, and I don't have any further questions either. So we will now move on to comments from the public about this project. Do we have anyone either on the Zoom audience or in our current audience in the schoolhouse that would like to make a comment?
We have 6 people on Zoom and about 11 people in the schoolhouse. If you would like to comment, please raise your hand on Zoom or come to the podium if you're here in person.
Would you like to come to the,
No, but can you please come to the podium so we can record it? Yeah, it's a public meeting.
Did I understand that the carports are equivalent to a car and a half width in size? So essentially, you're adding 2 carports that are 3 garage sizes. So you have a double car garage and an equivalent of 3-car garage. So that's 5 feet of roof line.
could I just make a point that we would like it if you could introduce yourself via the microphone so that we can have your name and address in the minutes of the meeting. If you could introduce, because I know that you're Nancy because I met you this afternoon, but the people on our commissioners do not know who is talking, and they do not know your address.
It's technically voluntary, but it's strongly encouraged.
Nancy on 143 next door.
Right, thank you.
So I got the impression from one of the gentlemen up there that each carport is equivalent to 1.5 garage spaces.
Right.
Essentially what you're doing is adding 3 carports to a 2-car garage. Is that not right?
Well, it would be 1.5 on either side.
Yes, but you put that together and that's the equivalent of 3 carports roof line.
Yeah.
And then the roof line of the double car garage. So essentially you're putting a roof line for 5 cars.
Right,
So that's kind of, I love the house, but the garage setup is annoying as hell.
right.
Plus, I think it looks like a self-serve car wash.
All right,
As it may, it's far too much of a roof line.
right.
You need a covered roof for guest parking. Everybody has a guest parking in their garage, in their driveways, and nobody covers their driveway.
Right. All right. Thank you for your comment. Do we have any further comments in the audience or on Zoom?
We do not have any hands up on Zoom.
My name is Dan Cornu. I'm from 182 Brookside, and I took the initiative to get involved in this conversation because my property was the victim of a very, very long and painful process involved with privacy, because a 2-story building was allowed next door, and it was such a crisis that the people that previously owned my house sold it and moved on, and we were left to pick up the pieces, and we solved the problem. We put up a barrier between us, but I just felt for Mike, because the feeling of walking out in your own front driveway and having people watching you is very uncomfortable, and it's a unique feature of 2-story structures that are next to you. And so I just felt the strong need to stand for that, and especially considering that he's building 100% within the code and regulations of the town, trying to protect his privacy. I would think that less important than the size of a car park space, because you can't split cars. So if you have a 1.5 size, it doesn't matter. You can't get 2 cars in it. It just means you can open the doors comfortably. But what it does do is it gives you additional privacy so that you don't feel observed when you're in your house. So I understand and I feel for Nancy, but at the same time, the property owner's Mike, and I wouldn't want him to have to go through what I went through to build barriers so that I wasn't observed standing in my own house. So I think it's a reasonable request, and I encourage you to please approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cornu. Do we have any other public comments?
No others.
No, nobody on Zoom?
Nobody on Zoom.
All right, in that case, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commissioners for discussion. Commissioner Chung.
Overall, my inclination is to recommend approval with the condition regarding the lighting. I do appreciate the rationale that was given around privacy, the single-story design of the home. I am a little bit perplexed by the size of the covered, not enclosed carport, and given the discussion that seems to have gone on for a little while, the sort of the very linear nature of the back of the carport, but it does appear to be within within the applicant's rights and within the policies of the town. And I can see how the linearity relates to the roof line of the primary house. It is more broken up facing the house with the gable roof added to the garage, the enclosed garage portion. I don't see it. It's
Sorry, through the chair, Kenny, there's some weird feedback. Is
Is there?
other people getting that?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's on your side. I'm not aware of anything here.
I don't hear it on my side, but I can see if I can put in headphones.
Yeah, it's quite loud on Zoom.
Okay, I will put in headphones. I apologize. Okay, is that better?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Sorry about that. So I guess just to sum up, I would like to hear out my fellow commissioners, but my recommendation is to approve with the condition regarding the lighting, and maybe with an encouragement to revisit the covered, not enclosed portion of the carpet. It's not. I don't see us being in a position to require a change to that, but I haven't. It's not obvious to me why it needs to be needs to have that roof line that offends the neighbor so much. I think it's within the applicant's rights, but possibly to the benefit of the applicant to do something about that roof line with regard to the applicant's relationship with the neighbors.
Right, you are going quite quiet on some of your comments, Kenny. They were in a fluctuating as to the level.
Sorry about that.
That's better.
So I think I'm happy to move on to my fellow commissioners' comments.
All right, thank you, Kenny. Commissioner Sill.
Yes. I think that the proposal that the applicant has given us is excellent. You know, when I look at it, there's just many positives in terms of, you know, we're replacing a rundown old place that violated creek setbacks and side setbacks, and the new structures won't. I feel like the landscape plan is well thought out, keeps the landscaping in close to the structure, maintains some natural space by the creek, modest water use, limited fencing, no lawn. It's reducing impervious structures and impervious surface. Except for the comments that I made about the few light fixtures that I objected to, I think that the lighting looks very appropriate. So, it looks like it's just a huge step forward for that property. I think that the carport garage structure, in my mind, is acceptable. I think that it is up to the applicant to decide how big of a space they want. Maybe they want to store big wide boats, who knows? It's the fact that it's a non-traditional dimension, that's really up to them. It follows our rules in terms of setbacks. It's not very high. And I think that the way to try to solve the problem in terms of impacting the neighbor is for the screening approach. And so the idea of leaving a tree, I think, is good. The idea of having a fence there is good. And really, if you look at that property, there's not a lot of choices for that structure. It pretty much needed to be there, else things would have to change dramatically, and or you'd have to impact the big nice tree. So, I think that the plan is very well thought out. And then I think that the material choices are good. The design looks excellent to me. So besides my comments on a few stray landscape lights, I think this is an outstanding proposal.
All right, thank you very much, Commissioner Sill. I have to again say that I have the advantage because I could visit the site this afternoon, and the way in which the applicants have thought about the trees on the site and sited their buildings to maximize the potential of those trees staying, I really liked. Moving the building out of the creek setback, I thought was also wonderful. And the reduction in impervious surface. So I'm in agreement with my fellow commissioners on that it's a great project and that it will vastly improve that site. I would like us to discuss, though, the lights between us before we entertain a motion. So would we like to ask for a reduction in the path lights of 2, 3, 4?
I had 4 that I would like to see removed.
I'm happy to use those to whatever Commissioner Sill deems appropriate. It's not a problem.
Right, okay. All right, I mean, the thing is, if decorative, we don't, for safety, we tend to agree, obviously, but for decoration, we tend to, as Commissioner Sill mentioned, have the light removal. So would somebody like to make a motion to the effect that we
Sure.
approve this?
I can make a motion. I move to approve the project with the additional condition that the landscape path lights plan is adjusted to remove the 4 noted path lights from the question I had for Ralph.
Right,
I'll
so-
second that motion. Sorry, was a question to follow.
So roll call for the motion.
Commissioner Sill,
Yes.
Commissioner Chung,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
The motion passes 3-0.
Congratulations. Right. So we're moving on to item 3 on our agenda of new business for this evening. This is the architectural and site development review of a 296 square foot addition, interior remodel, pool remodel, spa and hardscape improvements of an existing single family residence that would exceed 85% of the allowed, of the allowed floor area in the main residence. A 799 square foot detached ADU is also proposed. This is for 315 Grove Drive, Janine and Michael Putra. Would you like to come up to the podium? And their architect is also here. Welcome. Feel free to pull up another chair.
We currently have 5 people on Zoom and now 3 people in the schoolhouse.
We have a yes. Right, so I think is Jamie going to present this one?
Yes, this is a presentation by Jamie.
Jamie is just for my fellow commissioners. I also met Jamie this afternoon, and she's the new
Yes, she's a relatively new consultant planner.
that I haven't-
She comes to us from the same team, the same consultant company as Jake and Ralph come from.
Right, great. All right then, so you now have the pleasure of meeting Jamie on Zoom.
Hello all. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So hello and welcome to all the members and staff and attendees. And was great to meet Jane today, and it's great to meet you both virtually as well. My name, as mentioned, is Jamie Bourne, and I'm a contract planner here to present a project proposal for design review and site development permit for a 296 square foot addition, rear patio expansion, hardscape improvements, a pool remodel, a new spa, and a detached 800 square foot ADU at 315 Grove Drive. The scope of work also includes an interior remodel, a partial re-roof, and return of impervious surfaces to natural terrain in the rear yard and portions of the side yard. The ADU is not subject to review by the ASCC. Following my presentation, the project applicant, Susan Bowen, will be providing a short presentation as well. The applicant request is to increase the floor area above the 85% allowed floor area for the main residence, which requires ASCC consideration pursuant to PVMC section 1848020. The proposal requests to increase the main floor area up to 96% maximum floor area to 5,588 square feet, concentrated in the main structure. In 2014, the ASCC considered and approved a request to allow the floor area, the main residence, to exceed 85% MFA, to 91%. Soil movement associated with the project includes approximately 40 cubic yards of cut and 50 cubic yards of fill. Just a moment, I'm trying to get to the next slide and it doesn't want to let me. There we go. The 1.5 acre property is relatively level with the exception of moderate sloping along Corte Madera Creek in the rear of the property. The existing house is a single story, is with an attached garage, and is well screened from Grove Drive and neighboring properties. The parcel is subject to creek setbacks, and it's also located in a special flood hazard area listed as zone A-7, and there is no work proposed within or near to the creek. There are easements on the parcel, which include a conservation easement that is called out, a pedestrian easement, and a slope easement along the front property line. As I mentioned, the easements are indicated on this site plan shown here and also as part of the project plans. Oh, sorry about that. I should have included that before. There, we'll do. Currently, the single-story house with attached garage is 5,291 square feet. Adding an additional 296 square feet will result in a 5,588 square foot main structure, including the attached garage. The addition to the house proposes to enclose a portion of the front entry porch, which I've indicated in green on the slide, and then also in the rear on the primary bedroom and bedroom number 3. The interior remodel would involve reconfiguration of existing spaces, including the primary bathroom, primary closet, removal of 2 fireplaces, a new mudroom off of the existing garage, and removal of walls to create a more open floor plan overall. The proposed exterior improvements include demolition of the existing rear patio and hardscape features, a 3,576 square foot paved patio, remodeled pool, new spa, and new planters are proposed. The project proposes, the existing height of the residence is 18 feet 7 inches, 7 3/16 inches. The proposed maximum height of the residence is 17 feet 3/4 inches. 2 chimney protrusions will also be removed with the removal of the existing fireplaces as part of the interior remodel. The project proposes a partial re-roof of the residence. There's an existing gabled portion of roof that contains asphalt shingles, which is proposed for removal and replacement with a flat roof with a single ply roof membrane. This TPO membrane that is proposed is slate gray with an LRV of 23. The area of sloped roof will contain asphalt shingles in charcoal gray with an LRV of 3. The slope area is depicted in here in dark gray. And the roof currently contains 14 skylights, and the proposed plan is to reduce the number of skylights to 5. I believe 5, yes. The proposed colors and materials for the exterior siding of the home include a smooth stucco and morning fog with an LRV of 42, Gibraltar with an LRV of 14, and black in portions that have an LRV of 3. Textured cement vertical siding with a wood finish look and LRV of 19 are proposed for the garage door and immediately surrounding wall, as well as the right side of the front of the home surrounding 2 new windows. During our site visit today, the homeowners discussed that they may want to consider the possibility of an alternative product, which was with the condition to possibly discuss with one ASCC member to approve the material should they find a more desirable product. That, of course, is consistent with the building code and WUI requirements. The proposed windows are anodized aluminum. Just a moment, let me get back to my which is an all-weather windows in a clear glass entry door with black aluminum trim. The proposed eaves are hardy board soffit panels with a paint color that contains an LRV of 6. Existing impervious surfaces consist of 11,263 square feet. The max allowable impervious surface area for the parcel is 8,325 square feet. The applicant is proposing to bring the amount of impervious surface into conformance by replacing 3,038 square feet of gravel area and stone walkway in the rear yard to natural terrain with dirt and mulch, as well as replacing 982 square feet of gravel with dirt and mulch at the left side yard, leading to the proposed ADU, resulting in a reduction of 4,020 square feet of impervious surface. Proposed impervious surfaces also include 2,533 square foot driveway, an 840 square foot pool and spa area, 3,576 square feet of paved and tiled rear patio, and combined front and side walkway area of 1,312 square feet. The total proposed impervious surface area is 8,261, which complies with the maximum allowable impervious surface area of 8,325 square feet. 585 square feet of landscape plantings are proposed for removal. As I'm indicated with on the left side here, the highlighted yellow area will be proposed for removal with the expansion of the rear patio area. The project proposes 393 square feet of rehabilitated landscaping and is not required to provide a landscape plan pursuant to section 1532010, number 2, in which projects with an aggregate landscape that are equal to or greater than 1,000 square feet of rehabilitated landscape area would require a building or landscape permit, plan check, or design review. And this is under the threshold of 1,000 square feet of rehabilitated area. There is no new fencing proposed as part of the project proposal. There are also no trees proposed for removal as part of the scope of work. An arborist report was prepared on May 9th, 2022, in which 13 trees on or near the property were surveyed by arborist consultant Kurt Fouts. The site contains 8 protected trees, inclusive of 5 coast live oak trees and 3 California bay laurel trees. The remaining 5 trees surveyed included 2 fruit trees, 2 dogwood, and 1 bay laurel with a trunk diameter less than 11.5 inches. The installation of the pool, spa, and patio areas in the primary bedroom addition are the elements closest to any protected trees. And as indicated on the slide, the tree protection fencing is shown by a red hashed line here and on the tree protection plan as part of the plan set. As mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, soil movement associated with the site development of the project includes approximately 40 cubic yards of cut and 50 cubic yards of fill. Removal of the soil is proposed as part of the pool remodel, rear patio remodel, and for the ADU. Fill is proposed for the above mentioned areas, for the 296 square foot addition, and for new hardscape planters surrounding the expanded patio and pool area in the backyard. Soil movement of less than 100 cubic yards requires staff level approval and is being considered by ASCC this evening as a result of ASCC consideration for the project proposal to exceed greater than 85% MFA for the main residence. Geotechnical has been provided by Romig Engineers on July of 2022 for the addition, pool, and ADU, and provided as attachment 4. The proposed exterior lighting plan contains 9 wall sconces that are 307 lumens each. Images of the fixtures are depicted here in the exterior lighting legend. 4 fixtures are located in the front of the property, 1 on each side near the front gates, and 3 in the rear yard. There are also 16 step lights proposed in the rear yard that are 68 lumens each. 2 outdoor wall sconces are also associated with the ADU. A total of 25 exterior light fixtures are proposed, plus the 2 associated with the ADU, which total 27 overall light fixtures. Notice to the public meeting was mailed to all the property owners within a 300-foot radius on February 3rd, 2023. The applicant also provided a neighbor notification letter on September 28th, 2022. Staff received no comments for either of the outreach. Based on the scope of work of the project, it appears that the findings B through D could be made, and the sub-finding A1 could be made within section 1848020. And staff is recommending that the ASCC review the plans and staff report, offer feedback or additional conditions, and consider approval of the architectural review and site development permits, subject to the recommended conditions in attachment 1. I appreciate all of your time and I look forward to your questions. And just a quick reminder that Susan Bowen will be presenting following my presentation.
Thank you, Jamie. I hope that wasn't as scary as it
But
I thought it might be.
thank
All right.
you.
Let's go back to commissioners for questions. Commissioner Chung.
Thank you for the presentation. I just had one question, which was a reminder of what the light reflectance value limit in the town policy is for the exterior colors.
You're quite faint again, Kenny.
Sorry, is that better?
That's a bit better.
The question was for a reminder of what the light reflectance value limit for the exterior is under our policy.
The LRV is a 50% value.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Anything else, Kenny?
No, that's
That was it. All right. Thank you. Commissioner Sill.
No questions from me.
All right. And there are no questions from me. So we would hand it over to the applicants for their presentation. Oh, if you would like to talk into the microphone, please.
Good evening. Thank you, commissioners, for being here so late. I don't know if you got the file that I sent before the meeting. Jamie? Can you hear us?
Yes,
Oh.
yes, Susan, I did. I was under the impression that you were getting to the meeting early to get that set up. So I will need to grab that file and share it. So if you would just give me just a moment. If you'd like to mention anything to start, just give me just a moment and I will bring it up, okay?
Yes, and I promise I'll be quick. I think you cover mostly everything. So I'm just gonna jump over some slides. Well, to begin, I'm here on behalf of Janine and Michael. They're here tonight too. Janine and Michael live in Portola Valley right now, over in Balsamina. So, and they have 2 small children that they're raising in the neighborhood. They fell in love with the property, with the site, with the creek and the trees, and with the house. Although the house is a single story, which was important too, and we wanted to preserve that single story residence. The house has good bones and it was remodeled extensively in 2014, I think additional remodel. And it has the right size and we're only adding 296 square feet to it, just to make up for some extra space in the master bedroom and a little bit of space in other of the bedrooms. There was never the intention of, using that left area to do like an accessory structure, and that's why we are using most of the allowable area in the main house. And that's why we are here on the ASCC, because we are exceeding that 85% allowable. From the design point of view, our main intention is to keep as much of the structure of the house. The house has a good footprint. Can you, Jamie, scroll down to?
Yes, please let me know when you'd like me to go to the next. I'm happy to do that.
The slides number 4 and 5. Yes, so we can see, I have some pictures here of the existing house and the existing trees. Keep going to numbers 5 and 6. impervious areas, which Jamie covered already. Keep going to slide number 8, sorry. Floor plans. So in these ones, we can see exactly where are we adding, which is mainly to the master bedroom. We're enclosing some part of the entry, which is already pretty enclosed within 3 walls. And there's actually an existing porch extension in that area. Keep going to 10 and 11. Yeah, this, go back, sorry. That one. So this is just, I'm just gonna make a quick description on this one, because it was important for us to save as much of the structure, but try to give the house a more modern and simpler look. House right now has a lot of type of, it has pitch roofs, it has flat roofs, it has a skylights with pitch, with like a clear story. It has clear story windows. So it's a little bit all over the place. So by just adding to the same roofs, curbs and parapets, we are simplifying the design in order to make it a little simpler and subtle. We're also applying different materials than they have right now. So can you keep going to the elevations here? So in here, you can see the existing and the proposed elevation. So the existing elevation has a little bit of, you know, pitch roof, has a lot of windows that are broken up, creating different patterns. And in the proposed, we're trying to simplify all this design composition, and I think it works nicely. Can you, next one? This is the rear yard. And by taking, removing that big skylight in the middle, we're actually reducing the height of the whole building envelope. And we are about 17.5 feet from the lowest grade. Next one. This is the material board, which you already saw. Next one. I wanted to include some pictures of the lights, actually not just the light fixture, but the lights in place, to, you know, show that these are very dim lights. This also, we can get them up to 2700 Kelvin, which is a very warm light. They're pointing down. And the step lights, I know it looks like we have a lot of lights in that plan, but these are actually very low voltage lights with a warm light. And they're actually a safety feature because we have steps in the backyard. And we believe it can get really dark. Now, having said that, if we need to reduce the number of some step lights, then I think we're okay. We're open to that too. Next, I just wanted to bring it up just in case somebody else bring it out, but I don't think we will, about the style of the house, because we're modernizing a little bit. And I can see that there is a trend in Portola Valley. There are a couple of houses already that have this modern look, flat roofs and volumes. And I see that some of those have been approved last year. They're not built, but they have been approved too. I think my last 2 slides are only the ADU and the materials for the ADU, which obviously will match the materials we're proposing to the house. And that's it. That's all I have for now. I don't know. Michael, you want to say something? No?
All right, thank you. Commissioner Sill, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Oh, I do, I guess. The question I have is, why are you keeping the big lawn? I think that you're gonna be back in that backyard, doing some work, cleaning up gravel, doing, expanding patio stuff. And I just cannot understand why you're just leaving that big lawn.
We're keeping the big lawn.
I think we're open to changing that.
Change it for turf. Yeah, so we didn't want to get into the landscape issue. We are reducing the lawn quite a bit though, in the area of the hardscape.
You are reducing it, but our limit on lawns now is 1,000 square feet, and you're going to have a 4,400 or 4,500 square foot lawn. So it's way, way over what we would approve on a new house.
It's already there. Yeah. Sorry.
That's my only question / comment.
All right.
Well, it's a good question, and I guess we need to, think about what is best if you want to keep the lawn for now, or maybe explore the option of changing it to turf. Yeah, yeah. That's right.
All right. Yes, I can hear. All right. Thank you for your responses. Commissioner Chung, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I'm curious if the response could be repeated for us to hear. I didn't hear the applicant's response to the last question.
Yeah, could you just speak into the mic, please, so they can hear on?
Oh, I just said, at some point in the future, we would definitely be open to a landscape plan. But right now, if the codes say that we can keep it, I would like to keep it only because we bought the house in November of 2021. We've been dealing with ASCC since March. It's very, very expensive. And we just want to, see if we can get approval so we can get the house, making the house and the ADU built so we can move into the house at some point. Landscaping, I think, would take another, long length of time, and we're reducing it. We're trying to be as responsible as we can, and so I just would not want to commit to changing it at this point.
Right.
We don't have to.
Right. I think. So can I say that I think what you're implying is that you'd rather find out whether or not you receive the approval tonight for the plans that you do have, and then consider maybe changing the lawn landscaping at some later point, because there are quite a number of non-natives in your garden, but and in addition to that, you have the lawn, but you don't want it to hold up your application now because you've already been waiting for 15 months.
That is correct.
Right.
Yes, that is correct. That is very, very correct. I'd be open to it. I don't want to commit to anything for the yard or landscaping right now, but I would definitely be open to it. Obviously, we want to be responsible human beings. We have children. We want to leave this world better than we entered it, and also we don't want to do anything that would be detrimental to the community or the landscape or geology or anything. So, yeah.
Right. All right. Yeah, because I don't think the landscaping plan isn't part of this approval anyway, is it? There was no landscape.
They have the reduction in impervious surface, but there's not a landscaping plan for the project.
No. All right. Okay, do you have any further questions, Kenny?
No, thank you.
All right then. I don't have any further questions, so I think we now go over to the public for comment.
We have 4 members of the public on Zoom, And we have just the applicant at this point in the schoolhouse. So if you're on Zoom and you'd like to provide a public comment, please raise your hand. Last call for public comments on Zoom. Seeing none.
All right, I'm closing public comment and bringing it back to the commissioners for discussion. And so shall I start with Commissioner Sill?
Sure. Yeah, I think that the proposal is quite reasonable. I don't have any trouble making the findings that the 85% could be exceeded and up to 96%, I believe is what the proposal was. You know, I like that the height of the building is being reduced by a foot, reducing the impervious. That's good. I think that the lighting proposed is quite appropriate. You know, my heartburn is with the lawn, and yeah, I just feel like sustainability is a core value in our town, and I'm not gonna vote for anything that's got a 4,000 square foot lawn. I just, you know, we've had droughts for like 7 out of the last 9 years in California, and we've got to start doing something about wasting water. And to me, you know, if I don't see some significant improvement on the size of a lawn, I'm not voting for projects anymore. So I like it. I just, it doesn't go far enough. To me, it needs a landscaping plan.
All right, Commissioner Chung.
I appreciate, I think the project on the whole is definitely an improvement. Keeping the structure, I appreciate very much. And the reduction of impervious surface. It seems to me that the impression I have is that the applicants might be okay with an approval with a condition that they reduce the lawn to what we would normally allow, or what would be the current limit, because it would just be expanding the activities that are included and removing some of the other hardscaping as well, in terms of what's needed to be contracted. So the suggestion there is to recommend approval with a condition to reduce that lawn size. So for the main topic of the floor area percentage increase, to go ahead and approve that.
Right. All right then, thank you. Right, well, I was again lucky enough to go and see the property this afternoon. So to me, the landscaping does not include a lot of native plants, but I wouldn't want that to hold up an application, because they have basically inherited that lawn, and they've inherited the plants that are in the garden going down towards the creek. They've also inherited some fantastic trees, which they are taking care of and which they're going to work towards looking after. And I appreciated the amount of impervious surface they were cutting back on. And I thought that the design of the building was more simple and elegant compared to the current one, and reducing the roof height. So I liked all of those things. But for me, the landscape wasn't part of the application. So while I could look and say, that's not a native plant, that's a dusky-footed wood rat nest, I wouldn't want to hold this up because of the lawn. Would so I think we need to discuss what would make Commissioner Sill happy, apart from digging all the lawn up at this point, at the same time as granting the approval.
Oh,
Whether or not
I mean,
plants-
I'd be happy with a commitment to, at some point in the future, dig it up, but, you know, I'm uncomfortable with missing this opportunity to get rid of one of the large lawns in
Right.
Portola Valley.
Okay. All right, so reduce, so a commitment to,
Through the chair, Commissioner Sill, are you looking for something that would be a formal condition of approval? Or are you looking from some kind of commitment from the owners to future consider or to make a future removal? Could you elaborate and see if I can help here?
A future commitment to remove a substantial portion of the lawn. You know, anything over 1,000 square feet, I'm going to be uncomfortable with. And anything that's fuzzy, like we'll consider it, I'm going to be uncomfortable with. I want to know that at some definite point in the future, there's going to be a much smaller lawn at this house for me to vote for it. I mean, I'm only one vote, right? So if the other commissioners feel like I'm off base, they don't, you know, they can go a different direction.
but we're trying to keep everybody happy, Al.
Okay, well, you know what it's going to take to make me happy.
Yeah, well, this commission usually works largely on consensus. And so
Yes.
it's fairly unusual to have split votes on this commission. It does happen from time to time. I think, you know, we have to think about two guiding principles that we always think about with planning applications, and that's the nexus and the proportionality. So if ASCC members wish to add a condition for removal of the lawn, then you would need to think about, is there a nexus between the existing lawn and the application that's in front of you? And is your request proportional? So given the scope of the project, is your request proportional to that scope? So people can reach different conclusions when you do that analysis, but that's what you should be doing when you're thinking about a project that's already in existence. Connection and proportionality. So that would be my advice. And if you were to impose a condition, you would want to articulate into the record why you think there's a connection and why you think it would be proportional. So that's kind of my technical advice for you in your deliberation.
Right. Well, I, for one, feel bad that that lawn was inherited. It wasn't actually installed by the purchasers. So they didn't, whoever was on the ASCC in 2014 were obviously the ones that approved that lawn.
And they suggested to the owners that it be removed. But they didn't make it, they didn't, you know, get any sort of a commitment. They just suggested it and it never happened. But if you review the minutes, it was brought up in the minutes for the 2014 project.
Right. The applicant would like to say something.
I'm just
Janine?
asking a question for clarity. So, and then first I would like to make a statement. Michael and I own a home in Ladera on South Balsamina, 230 South Balsamina. We did an extensive to the studs remodel of that house. And then when we moved into the house, a year later, we did landscaping. And in that landscaping in our backyard, which is there right now, we have faux grass. We don't even have real grass in our current house that we just did in 2018. Actually, the yard was done in 2019, right before COVID. In the front yard, there's like, it's just trees and mulch. We would never, ever plant a yard with grass. That our water bill is out of control. Like we wouldn't do it on purpose, but I guess I just have to sit here and re-emphasize that it's very, very important for us to somehow figure out how we can get approval tonight, because again, we've been dealing with ASCC since March of 2022, and it is very expensive. So if we need to make some sort of commitment to get rid of that, a large portion of that grass at some point in the future, I feel like it's unfair to put that on us. But if you want to give me a date, and if you want to give me a number of what you want that grass to be, we need to move forward. I mean, it's just hard sitting here discussing the grass, which I know is important, and I get it. I'm not trying to trivialize it, but like, we really, really need to emphasize that we really, really need approval to move into our house.
Right.
So we'll do whatever. I mean, just tell us. Like,
Okay.
I mean, I think it's unfair, but just, we can't fight this.
All right. Commissioner Sill, would you be happy with a landscape plan coming back to one ASCC member for approval before the final building?
Oh, no. Wait, before we.
No,
can
no,
move into
no.
our
I meant,
house.
no, what, sorry.
I am understanding the applicant's interest in it being a longer stretch. I mean, the final approval for a house, a remodel of this size is relatively quickly. This is a small addition that they're talking about.
What, when the planning department goes out to say everything's okay,
Mhm.
but before, if we made it a condition or something to go in with that they maybe come through with a plan at that point.
And I'm saying that's going to happen pretty quickly. In addition of the size doesn't take that long, right? ASCC often deals with new houses that may take a year or two to reach completion. And this is a relatively small addition and remodel compared to what ASCC often sees.
Yeah.
It's only in front of ASCC because of the 85%. So that's the only reason that it's in front of you. So otherwise we would be approving this at a staff level.
Well, I mean, if there's some way to manage it, I wouldn't mind if the applicant said that, you know, they would redo the landscaping in 5 years. I'm not so
Right.
bent out of shape about when it happens. I just want to know that we're going to get rid of the lawns in Portola Valley over a period of time. So that, you know, and like I said, I think this project is great, but I want to know that we're going to gradually not have lawns here.
All right. So if I suggested that we made a motion to approve with the condition that a landscaping plan came back to the ASCC within 5 years from the date of the approval, to be reviewed by one ASCC member, would that work for you, Commissioner Sill?
It would.
Right. In that case, I would like.
But I don't know. I mean, we don't usually do things like that, right?
Yeah, we don't usually do something so far out without an agreement. And, you know, usually it's if something has gone wrong, if we've got a code enforcement issue or if we've got a problem that we have to implement over several years. From a practical point of view, it would be very difficult for us to implement a 5-year condition.
What limit would you suggest? What timing would you suggest as a time limit?
Well, we just don't go that far out. We don't have a practice in this community.
Okay.
There are some places where landscape agreements are in effect, and then the landscape agreement can include long-term things, but there's been an active decision here in the past not to enforce landscape agreements.
Well, could we ask for a commitment at some point in the future? With a time limit?
Absolutely. I mean, it's just a matter of if ASCC members are willing to receive a verbal commitment from the homeowners, or, you know, and reflect in the record and, you know, reflect into the minutes. But I just don't know how to condition something that far out.
Right. So if we don't condition it, but we accept a verbal commitment from the applicants to say that at some point they will review their landscaping plan and remove the lawn without a time stamp on it, that would work. Commissioner Sill.
Uh,
You're not, obviously, you not being here and being able to see the faces of the applicants who do not look as though they are going to
Cry.
but they,
I
to be
have
honest,
the-
I don't think that they're going to flout this commitment. I
So,
don't think they're going to renege on it.
I'm willing to go along with
I
just a verbal commitment from the applicant, because I do feel like they've put forward a good proposal. And I feel like if we do vote, I'm going to lose 2-1 anyway, right? So I certainly trust them. I just want to make the point that it's really important for us to not have so many lawns in Portola Valley, and this is a egregious example of what we need to get rid of.
I got the impression, I got the impression that the applicants would accept an approval with a condition to reduce that lawn size.
I'm not sure that they want to absolutely be tied to removing the lawn by a certain time, which is what Laura is saying is that we can't condition something 5 years out. We'd have to say within a year or within the time for the final approval of the building permit, which is why I'm trying to negotiate this so that they commit, but there's no time on it.
Yeah, I'm willing to go along with that.
Right. Because I need one of you to make the motion, please.
Can I just make a suggestion? I recognize that this is difficult, right? Because you've inherited this property, you're trying to improve it. This is for your family. I think you've reflected into the discussion that you have shared values with the community and that you intend to do the right thing. I think my opinion, just my opinion, is that it would help if you would be willing to, make a statement to the commissioners about your intent to remove the lawn. If you could kind of put that into the record for them to hear. I know we've discussed it a lot, but one more time based on all this discussion, that would be my suggestion.
We are happy to put into the record, verbally, in the official record, that we will reduce the lawn significantly to 1,000 feet or less. We would also like to point out again that in our current house that we live in right now at 230 South Balsamina, there is no grass by design from us. And actually from us, there's no grass. It is faux grass. We're all about what you are saying. I just really it would just be very, very hard to have to go and do all of that with the remodel. At this point, that's my hesitation, is the time, dollars, like the stuff that we have to do in order to even break ground would be a very, very long time. And so that's the hesitation that we're seeing, not the desire to keep this big giant lawn in the backyard.
No. Right. So Commissioner Sill, Commissioner Chung, any further discussion?
No, I'm satisfied.
Commissioner Chung?
No further discussion from me.
Right, so I would need one of you to make a motion.
Okay, I'll move that we approve the project with the conditions outlined in the staff packet.
I'll second.
Roll call, Laura, please.
Commissioner Sill,
Yes.
Commissioner Chung,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
passes 3-0.
Got a very relieved looking applicant there.
Congratulations, guys.
there would be so much there that you would have said no, 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 no to, but I don't think that the applicants are going to be keeping all of that non-native. They've got a bank of, I can't even remember what they're called because they're not natives. What's that one going down to the creek?
Yeah, I don't even know what they are. They're not even sealed. If I were to
No.
design a yard, they would not
I
survive.
think they're alliums. It's just a
Oh.
whole bank of alliums.
It would not.
Okay.
And but they are looking after the trees, and there are clumps of grasses out at the front which aren't natives. But I think as and when they're living in the property, because they haven't moved in yet. But obviously that's something that wasn't coming across from the application. It would have to be.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate the complexity of doing a remodel after buying a place and being asked to do landscaping. I mean, I think that is a very difficult situation. And that's why I was trying to find a way to structure it so that we could be sure that something was done, but it didn't have to be done concurrently. And I'm satisfied that the applicants will do their best to eventually get the property into the state that we'd like to see it in.
If it's any relief to you, Al, the gophers and the moles are really trying to eat it all anyway.
Go Gophers,
doing
go
pretty well.
Gophers.
If you leave it to them, they'll take care of it.
Yeah.
They've got hills all over that lawn. They're going to have covered it before they even get the approval.
Okay.
I do know that from this afternoon's meeting, the applicants were asking how long it would take for approval. Well, the process was now before they could actually start, whether that could be clarified.
You
I'm
can
not sure
submit
whether-
for your building permit at any time. There is technically a 15-day appeal period on this approval. So we can't issue the permit during that time. Obviously, that wouldn't happen anyway, and you're applying at your own risk, but most people apply right away for their building permit.
Okay, and then do you know how long it takes for the building permit approximately?
It varies widely depending on your response to the comments back from the plan check.
Any ballpark idea?
It really varies a lot. This is a relatively straightforward process. So my best advice is when you submit to our team, you'll be talking to one of my technicians and get a timeline for when you're going to get your plan check comments back, and then line up your professionals, get on their schedules for that time period, because the biggest delay right now is the professionals' time in terms of being available to make revisions. So that's the best tip I can give you is my team will tell you, for example, 4 weeks. It's a number approximately like that. And then when you get that comment back, you can contact your professionals and say, I need you to be available in 4 weeks to do the response to these comments.
Okay.
So that's the fastest way to get through, and to really, if you have any questions about the plan check comments that you receive, ask for meetings or ask for phone conversations to follow up on them. Because sometimes in writing, things can get lost a little bit. That's the fastest way through.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you very much. You're approved.
Yeah, 15 calendar days. Mhm. Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you guys.
Right, so we'll go back to the regular agenda if I can ever get there. All right, so commission reports. Has anybody been to any properties or Commissioner Sill? I think
I
you've
have
been-
not.
All right, Commissioner Chung.
Well, we had the re-review of the, but I don't think that's closed out yet.
Okay, so I think the one you're referring to there is 1195 Westridge Drive.
Yes.
Yes, and I saw Ralph about that one, and there was the bump out on the roof, and I approved that one, but the landscaping plan I sent back to, I didn't like, because the plantings were too linear, and there were too many toyons, and they were lumped together, and I think they just went overboard on planting, because this was the property that had the appeal to the planning commission and the town council, so I think they went overboard on planting. So I've gone back. I suggested to Ralph that he went back to conservation to see if they agreed with me on the landscape plan. So that was one. So you're still responding to that one, Kenny?
No, I agree with the strategy. I guess it sounds like we don't have a response from Conservation Committee.
I think it only went back to conservation last week.
Right.
So that would, I'll check in with Ralph tomorrow on that one. And the other property, I reviewed the tile at 241 Georgia Lane. They came in with a light grey tile, and I asked for alternatives, and they brought in 2 more tiles, and I chose the darker one, because it's in a darker, well, it's an overshadowed area, it's near a creek, and the light grey would have been too much of a contrast with the colouring of the area. Plus, I didn't think there was going to be any advantage in having the light one for heat reflection, because they're overcast by trees. But those were the only 2 reports I currently have. So I think we now move over to staff report with Laura.
Let's see, a couple reports for you. The town council began the interviews for ASCC members, but there was a literal Zoom problem, and they weren't able to finalize those interviews. So that's getting reworked and rescheduled to add the new ASCC members. Some more information will be coming on that. As a reminder, we go back to mandatory in-person meetings starting in March. So please plan on being in the schoolhouse for the 6 o'clock meeting, starting for the March meetings. So please plan for that. If you're not able to come in person, then please let me know, because until we have more members, it's very challenging for a quorum. And also when we have new members, we want to make sure we have the stability of our existing members, and we are thinking about that as we're getting new members trained. It's my intention to do some training with new ASCC members. So I've already talked to Dave and Megan, our outgoing members, and I'm going to invite them back to do a training session with our new members so that they can get the benefit of their experience. So I'll be doing that, and we can give you an update when that comes up. And then always on our mind is the housing element update process. And so we have a planning commission meeting this Wednesday to talk about the housing element update. And then we expect to have one more meeting with the planning commission, which will probably be on March 6th. I'm finalizing that right now, a special meeting so that we can get all 5 planning commissioners. And then we expect the town council to review the housing element and all of the associated materials on 3 Wednesdays in a row in March. So keep your eyes open for that. I think it's the 15th, 22nd, and 29th, I think. Right. So, keep an eye on the calendar if you want to participate in that, and send your friends and neighbors to the Housing e-Notify or to the calendar if you want to keep up with that effort. So those are my updates for you.
Right, okay. I have to say that keeping up with the town council meetings on this housing element is quite a lengthy process.
It is.
Meetings don't seem to stop much before 12.
Yes, everything is going long because there is lots of conversation. And if you haven't seen it, Al will appreciate this because he's been in so many of these meetings. We did compile all of the meetings that have happened for the housing element process and totaled up the time. And we're at, I think right now, 36 meetings and 120 hours
Wow.
of public discussion, right about there. So it's about the most in-depth housing element process that anyone can imagine or remember or will ever think of into the future.
It boggles the mind. It really does.
It's a lot.
Yes.
Okay.
Well done for hanging in there, Laura.
Thank
I have
you.
to say.
Thank you. Yes. You all know that it's not been the case for the other planning directors of the small towns.
Yeah.
I am the last woman standing, depending on. So we,
What's left then?
some of the other planning directors have either gone on leave, retired, or moved on to other positions. Now, there's lots of things that go into that kind of decision-making. But I don't think it's a coincidence that all that happened during the housing elements approval process.
I think it just must be so stressful for you as well as the town council and the ASCC and the planning commission.
It's very stressful for everybody involved. I think that's certainly the case. And I hear the same thing from my colleagues. It's a really difficult process because there's so much involved in it and there's so much nuance and the laws are really difficult to understand and interpret. And so it's a hard thing for everyone to get through.
And you didn't even come to the volunteer party so that we could give you a glass of wine.
I did not. I was not able to come to the volunteer party, but thank you. Thank you.
All right.
We do have one hand up from Zoom, so it is appropriate for us to take public comment on these reports.
All right.
So we have a phone number ending in 7562. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Caroline Bertongen. I really appreciate Portola Valley residents to give their time and efforts to make the rightful decisions. During this meeting, I had my hand up several times and I was not able to speak. So this is one of the issues that we have raised over the last few years, that communication continues to be a problem. I was happy to hear finally from Commissioner Sill that he does not want lawns in Portola Valley. If I can remind Mr. Sill that lawns are very beneficial. Especially some of us need lawns because there's no fire safety in Portola Valley, and we need them as a barrier before they will destroy our houses. I really approve, I mean, especially on the last candidate, who, if I am correct, they purchased their home in 21, and they're trying everything to please the town. You know, since they bought their house, we also have different climate change or whatever weather patterns. For those people who live in Portola Valley or have lived in Portola Valley for a long time, we know we had these. These are cycles of drought, and then suddenly we have a lot of precipitation. And I believe I have spoken at several of your meetings and the Planning Commission because I wanted to remind the members there is a pattern in Portola Valley, and we want to protect the new owners, and we also want to remind the consultants who advise the new owners what is happening in Portola Valley. So I wish I was able to speak up earlier, but removing the lawn is not a solution to the current issues in Portola Valley. And I hope we will have a more extensive dialogue about this, because there's several issues and concerns that need to be addressed before we change our policies. If indeed, and I'm talking about the last project that you said of Grove, if indeed in 2014 there was a verbal, a verbal condition that they would reduce the lawn and they didn't, why is that? There's several issues in Portola Valley that need to be consulted. We need to have a fair and a transparent policy to ensure that everybody is treated right. And particularly on Grove, there have been very many changes on, or many people who were able to remodel and added property. And for some reason, they were not consistent with the existing policies.
All right.
So,
Thank you, Carolyn.
all right, thank you.
Right, do we have any?
We have another hand up from Dale Kane. Dale, please go ahead. It should be comments related to the commission reports and the staff report.
Yes, definitely. So my son and I were there for a scout meeting, and that was about 5 hours ago. It was great. And you guys are still there. I see it in the Zoom here. So I just want to say, I think the commission did a great job today. And I just want to say, we appreciate your service to the community.
Thank you very much. Do you have any other hands?
There are no other hands up.
Right. I would also like to comment that since I am next to Planning Director Laura Russell, I didn't see any other hands up earlier in the evening for public comment. So I'm not quite sure whether or not Mr. Tongan's computer access was down or something, but I didn't see any, because you can actually see a hand going up on Laura Russell's screen. So I'm not sure whether or not that was a connectivity issue. Okay. All right. So finally, we have our approval of minutes for the December 12th meeting, which 2 months ago, which was our last meeting. So did anybody have any comments on what was contained in those minutes?
They looked fine to me.
It looks fine to me as well.
All right, they look fine to me. So can I entertain a motion to approve these minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes as written.
A second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Sill,
Yes.
Commissioner Chung,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
motion passes 3-0.
All right. In that case, I think that we are adjourned. Thank you very much for your attendance, everyone online and in the room that have now gone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jane. You did a great job.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.